Shogun 2 Total War has been released in 2011, so it's been a very long time, over 10 years now. I haven't quite played it when it was just released, so I wanted to have a quick overview of the game, see is it worth a play so many years after the game's release. So let's have a look at the pros and then the cons, and then I will give you my overall conclusion on this game.
Our general is in grave danger, my lord!
And I'm not going to be talking about multiplayer here. Multiplayer is so amazing in Shogun 2, it's worth a separate video altogether. Nothing like this was done either before or since Shogun 2, really. There is also the amazing drop-in battles, which I think should be default for any Total War game, but they unfortunately been dropped after the Shogun 2. But in Shogun 2 you have that option, and this is amazing. So to begin with, the game is absolutely gorgeous. Graphically speaking, there is a campaign map, there's a battle map, they're all absolutely gorgeous, they're beautifully looking. You look at the building textures, you look at the land textures, you look at the spectacular water texture, the units, everything looks fantastic. The 2D art, the 3D art, it's probably the best in the series. It's absolutely oozes the atmosphere, it's so atmospheric, it's so appropriate. The unit cards, the tech cards, the portraits, everything looks absolutely amazing. They spend so much time and effort to actually make it match the original Japanese manuscripts, pictorial sources that we've got. There is absolutely no complaint whatsoever on that front. Extremely atmospheric environment, beautifully looking both on campaign and in battle. Shogun 2 also features one of the best, if not the best, battle AI that I've ever seen. On the battlefield, they will form a defensive position, they will fight for the hills, they will skirmish. The AI making very good choices when it comes to skirmishing versus hand-to-hand combat. It will exploit the advantages it's got to a greater extent than I've ever seen. There was a battle that they could not force it off the top of the hill. There was some woodland on top of that. They were covering their units in that woodland, and they were making sure they fire missiles at me as much as they could. In essence, I felt like I'm playing against human player rather than the AI, and it was so good. In terms of the campaign AI, it's also vastly improved, and I will get to some other aspects of it in a moment. So the AI now sees writing on the wall, and it will be reasonable, it will want to survive, it will not be suicidal, it will not be fighting till the last drop of blood. Now let's have a look at some of the cons, and it's to do with the AI as well. So AI is a little bit too obsessed with the human player. It's a little bit heavy-handed the way that it's been designed. AI will often ignore defense of its home provinces, and there are often the situation when the AI will leave its home provinces undefended, and because there are really no siege times here, you can assault the fortifications straight away. What will happen? The AI will send its stack or two stack and will be attacked in the meantime and taken over and destroyed. So I had factions that were just wiped out, and their armies will be totally disbanded and they will be gone. And this is all on hard campaign settings. This is the default setting I'm normally playing on. Now another thing I was not particularly impressed with was this realm divided feature when you become too powerful and when Shogun declares war on you and everyone attacks you eventually. Unfortunately, this only applies to human player, it seems. I had factions that were twice my size, nothing of the sort happened to them. So it seems that human player is discriminated against and doesn't give you an opportunity to sit back, slowly develop, slowly expand. As soon as you hit this threshold, which I think is quite low, then everyone turns against you. And again, it doesn't apply to the AI, so it leads to this one-dimensional gameplay where every campaign is essentially the same. It doesn't lead to the situation when you can actually sit back and see some other factions take this powerful role and being declared enemy of the state and everyone turning on it. That would create a bit more of diversity gameplay-wise, I think, but it doesn't happen. It's only the human player, it seems to me, that is targeted and assessed in this fashion. Another thing worth noting, and it's on hard campaign difficulty, is the AI affords much more in terms of stacks and quantity of the units it can field than the human player. This feels like cheating because you have tiny clans that can actually field 2-3 full stacks. There is no way they could afford it because the player faction being twice, thrice the size cannot really afford one full stack. And another thing worth mentioning on this front is the army composition. The AI, unfortunately, towards the middle of the game, it will field almost exclusive samurai armies. It's not historically accurate. Ashigaru units should be occupying much larger proportion of the AI armies, and in fact human player is reduced to recruit armies that are more realistic, largely based on Ashigaru, because of two reasons. First of all, it takes longer to recruit samurai units, which you don't have the time because AI being so aggressive. It keeps throwing units and stacks at you, depending on the faction to be fair, but it generally would attack you pretty soon. And it's also cheaper to acquire Ashigaru units, so you end up with a more historically plausible, realistic armies, whereas AI cheats and sometimes throws at you exclusively samurai build armies. So there are a couple of problems here, first with historical accuracy and also with the actual gameplay that leads to frustration when you have to time and again beat them back. There's also a lack of diversity. There is some variety depending on the faction, but it seems very limited in terms of how different the units are, how different the rosters are. It's definitely the area that could have been expanded and improved upon. In terms of campaign map, it looks great, it feels quite balanced, although I would really like to see maybe introduction of Korea, Okinawa, maybe Hokkaido, expanding it a little bit, making it slightly larger so you have more provinces and maybe more factions as well. So what's the overall conclusion there? Well, it's not all gloom and doom as you may imagine. It's actually an amazing game in so many aspects. In terms of atmosphere, it's actually oozing the atmosphere. You know, the 2D art, the 3D art, the audio, the voices. It's absolutely fantastic in that regard.
Say what you must, but my heart...
It's so solidly built. Now in terms of the AI, yes, it's a little bit hyper aggressive on hard, to my liking. It's a little bit too obsessed with the human player. It's a little bit, you know, heavy-handedly implemented, but overall the AI is solid. On the battlefield is really good. On a campaign, it knows when it's beaten. It will give you the run for your money, but it knows when to stop. It will accept the vassalage, it will accept the ceasefire, so in those terms, I'm very happy with it. You can also get different experiences depending on the faction you play. Some are really tough, some have slightly easier time expanding and surviving. So there is some diversity there. So all in all, it's a fantastic game. Even though with all the drawbacks I mentioned in terms of the AI behavior at times, it's still very atmospheric, very solidly built game. In fact, whoever led the development of this game should be just on a permanent contract with the CA. It's amazing game. So from the graphics, from the looks, from the campaign map, battlefield maps, to very unique, very authentic 2D and 3D art, to solid AI, especially in field battles, this is a very good game. One of the most immersive atmospheric games the CA ever produced. So this is it, guys. This is my take on Shogun 2, on vanilla Shogun 2 on hard campaign difficulties. This is the best vanilla game I've ever played. In fact, it's so solid, you don't really feel the need to run for the mods straight away. And the various elements of it fit together so well. They create such an amazing, immersive and enjoyable overall experience. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Did I miss anything? Did I forget anything important? Whether you agree with me or disagree, let me know. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and I shall see you in the next one.